Welcome to the Authors Hour. Can you all hear me back there? Great, fantastic. Thank you for braving the threatening weather. I thought I heard someone yelling FDM, FDM. My name is Fred Zirm, and I represent the Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center. We are a volunteer organization whose mission is to promote writing and writers on the institution grounds, and we hope even beyond, by both supporting and supplementing the activities of the Chautauqua Writers Center, the institution's official arm. We sponsor several events every week. I'd like to just run them down quickly. One of them, you're at the Authors Hour every Tuesday at 12:15. We feature authors associated with Chautauqua who have a published book. And if you'd like to be one of those for next year, you can go to the website that I'm going to keep repeating, which is at chq.org/FCWC, and you scroll and you can find Authors Hour application. You can also find other things that I'll mention. On Sundays at 5 o'clock, up in the Prose Room, we have an open mic session open to both writers and listeners 18 years old or older. I think most of you are older, so you're eligible to either read or just attend and listen. On Fridays at 1:15, usually in the garden room, and I think this week we're back in the garden room. We got displaced by the auction last week. We have what's called an informal critique. If you have a piece of writing, limit to 1 page of prose or poetry, that you can honestly have 10 copies just in case we have a great turnout. You'll get feedback facilitated this week by John Brantingham, who also teaches officially here. So you're getting a very high class facilitator. Those are the weekly events. At halftime, I'll talk about some of the special annual events that we sponsor. But now to get to the reason you're here, to listen to some poetry. Our first poet is Richard Craig Sipe. He's the author of the poetry collections Lovely Threads, great title, and most recently another great title, Here It Comes and It's Gone. His work has also appeared in journals, including Iconoclast, Thank the Carp, Last Lead, and Hole in the Head Review. He is a poetry editor and audio editor for the Quarterly Art and Poetry Journal, which I the Cafe Review of the important name, Richard Craig Sipe.
Thank you, Fred. It's great to be here on one of my favorite porches in the world. Fred alluded to my latest book, Here It Comes. Came out in February of this year, and it's gone already. The book generally is about the temporary nature of existence and attempts a reckoning with all of that without taking itself too seriously. So with that, let's see what we got here. I have these all pre-marked because I don't want to go over in my time. It's always good to begin with the title poem of a book, if you have one, and I do. Here it comes, and it's gone. Like a bladeless jackknife without a handle, here it comes, and it's gone. Like a deckless bridge without the piles, a rockless bedrock without the bed, here it comes, and it's gone. Bladeless, deckless, reckless, feckless, here comes the age, here comes the rage, here turns the page like love without the let, Here it comes, and it's gone, gone, frickin' gone, like never, without the nil or aught thrill, without the pill or shot, the no, without its precious thing. Here it comes, and it's gone. Here it comes, and here it comes, and here it comes, here. It all kind of disappears off the page after that. Yeah, that's quite something, isn't it? Yeah. This next one is called Evil Glass Dog. In my younger days, his coiled green eyes would bore into my soul from the dresser top as I tried to sleep at night. It got so bad that I would turn him around to foil his ghastly grill, and yet by morning he somehow spun back around. By college, though, I'd outgrown the disquiet, there being so many other stuff capable of fending off sleep. After that came work, and somewhere north of 30, I rummaged over the evil green dog, tissue-clad in a cellar box. Those corkscrew peepers, more like puppy dog bullseyes now on a long, verdant face. Today, he sits his salvaged butt on a shelf above my desk, across from the living room couch. I can turn him toward me on purpose these days, just to look him in the eye, just to make sure those old dust goonies are properly shaken off, only to find him looking away again and again, now foiling my dare. Perhaps it's the pulse of the train running out back that shakes his resolve and averts his stare. Or maybe it's the charm of his distant glass planet, whispering to him in tongues that I am no longer fit to haunt. No longer fit to haunt. That's me. This one is about what our world must have been like a long time ago. It's called The Cozy Soup. All this natter about borders, nationality, and race finds me longing for the simpler days of primordial ooze, when we all moleculed about the cozy soup in our unsovereign state of goo, gunk, filth, slop, sludge, alluvium, and muck. When we had a convention back then, we just mired our slimy non-butts over to the consommé and checked in. No need to take off our shoes. And when someone threw up, nobody knew who. This one goes back to childhood days. It's called Cow Game. I played the cow game with my sister in the back seat on long country drives to nameless places with our parents. The left cows were hers, the right side mine, while a trusting ledger between us tallied our scores in the bucolic reeling on. And if a cemetery intervened on whichever side of the Burgundy Grand Torino, we lost our cows. They were dead. The score reset. But then, after that, a while longer, we were there. This one's about a kind of a poetry reading called Chicken Dance. Dante died and went to heaven, ending up in the accordion room. When St. Peter arrived fresh from a pie fight, Dante demanded an explanation for his fate, whereupon Petey called out in holy yodel, and Dante blinked and zapped in front of an audience, the stage set for a rapt reading next to a crackling heart in the Windbox chamber, where the day's celebrants had suddenly found themselves captive, and to which Dante had brought only the one poem. While we're on the subject of religion, this one's called Judas at the Buffet. Shrinking from the Cursus Siliquastrum, Judas flew to Reno with his 30 pieces, first binging at the sodden buffet of pork butt, devil dogs, and fireball shots. So flipside from the spare repast last Wednesday, before crapping his whole jingle bag into riches. Selling out his chips, Judas moved back to promised property estates, avoiding eye contact, nose glasses donned, and cloven hoof song in his rear view ear, where he procured a nonchalant garden villa with a stark view of a sturdy, smoking dogwood. Oh, this one's a true story. I actually had to change a name to protect the not so innocent. Bad news. It's called Clara's Affair Flute. Clara's Affair Flutes appeared suddenly at her estate sale. Sets of 2 hotel crystals times many, in unabashed queue behind the auctioneer. Her untimely demise had not sufficiently prepared her grown children for the body goblet parade, even though she had revealed them months ago during a cellar purge. Each stemmed couplet had its own tale of tale, which she told impassively to her aghast brood. Some of the day's best-known wine drinkers posed at the crotch of her yarns, kneading up old questions in the kids regarding family resemblance. Now, this is where a close family friend like me comes in handy. Mid-sale, I am discreetly dispatched to the dump with the tingle clinks of Hyatt Crystal necking in my back seat, toasting each other after all these years apart, touching in some inscrutable, shattering way only glass understands. See what else we have here. This one's called Wagnerian Haiku. It's actually the end of a trilogy that goes throughout this book, and Wagnerian Haiku is the last part. After the scandal and rehab, Richard invited Brenda out for a first date. Got her Dameron at the Met. 6 hours and 30 minutes later, they operated a micro wine and cheese shop near Breakwater Falls, close by the swing bridge, where they both agreed they could jump off of if they wanted to in any direction. Oh, this one I wrote here in a workshop at Chautauqua 2 or 3 years ago. It's called The Poet at the Dive Bar Fight. You remember that one, Fred?
I did. Not the fight, but no.
There was no real fight. If I'd have been there, I would have pummeled their fists with my jaw, shattered their booted tootsies with my groin, and vomited upon their collective well-being with maudlin poetry rife with device. They're lucky I wasn't there that night. My ambulance would have flattened their assonances. This next poem, is about my grandfather and an old friend of his back in the day debating politics. It's called The Verses. The brandy bottle came out when J. Rankin Downey crossed 6th Avenue in the evening to debate politics with my grandfather before dinner. It was a hidden Christian Brothers fifth that emerged from behind the history of Beaver County on Granddad's library shelf that facilitated their dialectic, though neither man was a model Christian. But they were the gentleman spirits of proper and perfect in the verses, horns and wings engaged elegantly until the roast was ready. And Miriam, from her husband's certain bent back across the river 6, always knew who won. So on Wednesday, back up in Brunswick, Maine, I'm the head chef. That's what they call us, cooks, head chef. The only place I'll ever be called a chef, at the Brunswick Soup Kitchen. So that's what this is about. It's called Hairy Carrot. The gleaners undirt these profane candy morse as they sift through the field in springs and fall. Apiaceous mud beige burrowed beasties, them bow-legged cowboy pelts, others with flip buck birds sprung up from their hairy carrot fists, bronxing to the sun. You would think they'd be hooligan tough, those mutter utters, those gangster roots, but they slice nicely into sticks, snack size, far sweeter than the more upright orange of their ilk, puffy harumphers in organic corners, a turnip nose for every pock and zit. No, the hairy carrots are far sweeter than their own shrubby beards would veil. Perhaps it's the extra time under muck that honeys them up, dirt balls matriculating from their sugared soil on weekends at the soup kitchen, late May to long past Labor Day. We pack the sweet gleaned under chips into sack lunches with smoked ham heroes and Fritos downtown behind the Kroger, where many a sunny civil riot takes place on Saturdays, and everyone shows up quite out of their bags to pick up the sticks, hungry stomachs, all blood color red in the gut, all ready to sit their reticent hells down and eat. So I'm going to read 2 more from the book. They're both animal poems, and then I have one after that. A Dog's Life Left. I lap the liquid seasons from my bowl. They overflow the rim, and I am making a mess with the future in my singular froth for the moment. I am unwittingly close to the careen of a screaming Buick LeSabre, but that asphalt yard in between me and the white walls is the ether chunk of a fat pig's ear in my chaw. Nothing but a heavenly gorge awaits. Rinds and coffee grinds, potato skins, and sweet dappled cob, all runneth over in this upturned, Rubbermaid can of a day. I can never get out of a book without at least one cat poem. And I have one here. It's called Cat Sitter. My hemorrhoid cushion looks a lot like my black cat curled up on the recliner. So I am always worried about sitting on her, although she would be soft. Okay. One more, not from the book. So if any of you all have been writing for a while, you're familiar and submitting writing, you're familiar with rejection. it comes with the territory. So that's what we have here. The poem about rejection. And it's called We Wipe Our Asses with Your Poem. A peon to the rejection letter. Thank you, dear poet, for printing your submission on such fine, absorbent paper. We would suggest that you not end so many lines with prepositions. We can say that because we are English majors and MFAers, but in the meantime, we are grateful to have so many poems to wipe our asses with. Thank you.
I will do the halftime announcement.
And then you.
Yeah.
Standing here.
Thank you so much, although you're going to be a very tough act to follow. I just want to make announcement about some of the special events that the Friends of the Chicago Writers Center sponsors. One of them is in the rearview mirror now. This past Sunday, we had the Authors Among Us book fair, annual book fair on Vesper Plaza, 12/2. If you want to be part of next year's, yes, you can go to the website, chbooks.org/FCWC. The annual writing contest will be closing shortly on July 28th. So if you are, or you know a writer of any age, we have different age categories, please submit your writing. You can find out more about that and at the website. Scroll down to the literary arts contest. You don't have to be a writer to participate. You don't have to be a writer to participate in another one of our activities, the Favorite Poems Project. That's coming up on August 5th. If you have a poem, not of epic length, it can't be the Iliad or the Odyssey, but a poem that's your favorite and you would like to read and then briefly explain why you love it, why it means so much to you. You can also, the divine comment, Billy Collins tells the story. Maybe you stole it from her poem about the first open mic. Remember that one? Which was exploring civility. And supposedly the first reader came up and said, you can anticipate the punchline where the first reader came up and said, my name's Dante, I just like to read 3 poems. We provided them for free. Anyway, please apply. I believe the deadline is the end of the month for an August 5th reading at 5 o'clock in the Hall of Philosophy. I did want to remind you of a couple of things. One, we will have time for Q&A at the end of this, so think of any questions you have about our poems, some of which are questionable. Books will be for sale, so remember that. Richard Craig Sipe, though, has an important announcement.
Yes, I explode with delight at the prospect of introducing Fred, our next reader. After earning a BA and MA in English from Michigan State and an MFA from the Playwrights Workshop at the University of Iowa, Fred Zirm spent nearly 40 years teaching English and drama at Landon Independent Boys School in Bethesda, Maryland. Since his retirement, he has continued to direct plays at community theaters, but also focused on writing poetry, flash fiction, and creative nonfiction. He has been coming to Chautauqua since 1998 and is deeply involved with the Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center. Fred's work has been published in about a dozen small literary magazines and anthologies, and we'll be reading from his two chapbooks today. Let's give it up for Fred Zirm. The blue trunks. Right.
Looks good to have you going. Yeah, unfortunately, this is not slam poetry. I'd like to read a few poems from my first chapbook, Object Lessons, that came out in 2021. As the name might indicate, it's a collection of poems about ordinary objects and everyday events and their possible significance. This is the first poem in the collection. It comes from a workshop here at Chautauqua, run by Kevin Young, who has become poetry editor for The New Yorker, but he never writes, he never calls. And he asked us to write an elegy, and I had already written elegies for my dad, my mom, and that. So I decided instead to write an elegy for analog television, which back in 2009 faded. So this is called An Elegy for Analog, June 12, 2009. On this day, analog TV gave up the ghost and the snow and the tin foil on the antenna and the test pattern at night and the national anthem at dawn and this is the best and horizontal holes and the slap on the side before you phoned the repairman who wore a uniform and tubes that glowed like embers and used testers at the local hardware and the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, and Elvis on the Ed Sullivan Show, and opera singers and jugglers on the Ed Sullivan Show, and families huddled around that black and white campfire, eating sponsored TV dinner before the sex became behemoth, parted off on journeys to make way to the flat screen, as slim as trophy wives, to be put on a pedestal and admired, picture perfect as only a paint by number picture can be. 0101, off on, no yes, the supermodels say. Digital is so decisive, but sometimes I miss maybe. If you're like me with this changeable weather, there are times you may have brought an umbrella with you, but then it turns sunny and you've forgotten the umbrella wherever. So this is the poem. Technically, it's a kind of sonnet with a fancy Latin title that means apologies for forgetting and a little dedication. So apologia pro oblivio is the latest of my lost umbrellas. Foul weather friend, forgive my forgetting you every time it turns fair, leaving you at some cineplex or under a fast food chair. What is so expandable should not be so expendable, but what is easily carried is also easily left behind. Abandoned with just the second thought. If I find you where I think I left you, I pledge to keep you close, though we both may be worn round the edges, slow to open, and prone to sudden collapse. Since you have been compact for me, this is my compact with you. When the sun shines, you can be my parasol, and I, your anchor against the wind. This was written after shopping for mattresses, those places where everybody's lying down for a few seconds and trying to test drive the mattress. Mattress land is where strangers briefly sleep together, Flocks of Goldilocks, trading places in search of the one that's just right, not too firm or too forgiving, all for the price they're willing to pay. Or they lie on memory foam, still as horses, and pretend to be the princes who content to see beyond the 2-minute test, the restless nights, the bitter morning, the prorated guarantee. I'd like to shift to my more recent chapbook that has just come out. I'm going to grab it so you can see the cover because I think they did such a great job on the cover. And then, I don't know if you can see it from a distance. Cover your right eye and tell me, okay. So it's a nice picture. They gave me two options. One was a more sentimental collage of dogs, and then this more like the usual suspects. This is the first poem in that collection, entitled Dog Tired. At times, the panting devotion, the adoring gaze, the disproportionate hurt or happiness become too much to bear, and I long for less dependence and more distance. But then again, the cat seldom comes when I call. Obedience. Why does my dog sit so patiently, waiting for the signal he can eat his bowl of food, but pays no attention on a walk when I forbid some rabbit droppings? Is yes easier to obey than no? Is the house my kingdom and the world his? Or can he only resist temptation when it is also the reward? What dogs do? What draws a dog to do his business in one spot and not some other? What is all that sniffing and shifting before the perfect place is found? Are they consulting some canine Yelp to see what's trending? Or are they seeking some niche that is theirs and theirs alone? Or perhaps they are eco-hounds looking for soil that needs enrichment. But most often they seem like pirates or poets, burying supposed treasure where we must stoop and strain to dig it out. This is the poem, the title poem, but I didn't read it first. Okay, the title poem for Rescue Dog, and it has an epigraph, a quote from Billy Collins. So, Rescue Dog. I tell my poetry workshop students, if you're stuck in a poem, just have a dog come in. I picture a climbing party of novice poets trapped on a narrow, wind-battered ledge, tied together at the waist by an overextended metaphor. They collapse and gasp in the thin air of abstraction, calling out for help. At that moment, a St. Bernard, large, clawed, and panting, scrambles over ice and rock to offer the climbers what they need, the chipped and weathered oaken cap of concrete images hanging from his furry neck. Or I imagine a lone poet, lost in deep woods of his own devising as he tries to follow Dante or Frost, who have left no breadcrumbs or broken branches. Preoccupied, he stumbles over a hidden meaning and falls into an arcane abyss. At that moment, his faithful colleague reaches barking to the farmhouse, where the mother, holding a dish towel, says, "She's trying to tell us something." Yeah, the father scowls and strokes his chin. Jimmy's fallen down that damn well again. He spits in the barnyard dust and wipes his mouth with the back of his hand. I told him to quit messing around with allegory. At this moment, my dog Snuff, a shepherd hound refugee from death row, looks up at me with the hurt but hopeful eyes of the once abandoned. I rise from my desk. Her tail thumps the floor as I scratch her head and then offer her the tethered freedom of the leash. She is once again delighted. The world is just beyond our door, and she can lead me through it. From a distance, but this is about the dog with the large decorative ears, because I say decorative, and that's actually coined by my daughter because she's deaf. Communication. The deaf dog barks, not knowing what it is to hear, but longing to be understood. Even shorter dog, called conditioned response. Later, whenever Pavlov heard a bell, Digby finds himself missing his hungry dog. Going to finish in record time here. This is from the first collection, but it's a last poem in that collection, and one I like to end reading with. Leaving the lights on. I know it's not frugal or planet friendly, but it makes me feel I've been here and might return. Thank you very much. We have plenty of time. So if anybody has questions for either of us, both of us, we have time to try to answer them. And we'll have time after that for selling and signing books if you're selling mine. But any questions? There, and then I'll get you first. Yeah, go. Yeah.
I'd like to know how you organize your book. How do you decide in what order your poems will appear? Is it simply as you write them, or do you try to have themes or some sort of organizational piece?
I'll let Craig start.
That's a really good question, because I have found that to be harder than actually writing the poem. My first book, I spent a lot of time organizing it, and I had 3 sections. I was staying up here for a month, and I had a efficiency apartment, and I laid all the poems out on this bed, and in the sections that I felt they fit best with. So anyway, I bundled that manuscript off. I was proud of what I did, and the publisher just blew it up. Totally blew it up. Things I had at the beginning, they said should be at the end. They encouraged me to get rid of some poems. I added some. But I learned a lot in that whole thing. A lot. So the second book, I was kind of expecting the same treatment, and it didn't happen. So I spent a lot of time thinking about the art of that book, and it seemed to work, but it's hard. That's hard stuff to deal with.
Can I just follow up there? How did the publisher decide what order to put it in when they rearranged your book?
Well, they had more experience doing this than I had at the time, and I liked what they came up with. It was a lot better than what I put together, and it made the book better. So I learned not to argue with them. Editors are there for a reason.
Also, Craig, I'm just curious, was it the same publisher both times?
Yeah.
Okay, same publisher. I had 2 different publishers. I always end with them. It just seems logical. So that was the one thing. I always just with this, it was semi-chronological. It started with poems about puppies and then more middle age and then older dogs and what happened. To be honest, I worked with not an editor from the publisher, but just a very experienced poet who arranged things to make suggestions. That arc was not as simple, although it did end with that. Okay. Sometimes it's pairs. You think, oh, these two should go together. They comment on each other, that kind of thing. And then some people feel, who cares? Lots of people read poetry this way. Oh, yeah, no. Oh, yeah, no. You know, and they don't even read it in sequence. But for getting the publisher's eye in here, a sequence is good. And the other thing besides ending with death, try to find a really strong poem to start with. There's a story about the New Yorker editor before Kevin and before Paul Muldoon, and I can't come up with the name, that had the wastebasket mode of evaluating things. There was the desk, there was the wastebasket. If the poem didn't catch by the wastebasket, it was gone. So you try to start with something good. Carly, do you still have your question?
Oh, yes, and it is so much more simple. A definition. What is a flash book?
Well, these are called chapbooks.
Did I?
They're short, yeah, chapbook. Okay. It's a short book. It's one that supposedly you could carry around if you have tapping kangaroo pockets, but in a pocket that just pull out and read. Usually a chapbook definitely has a thematic focus. This is about dogs. The other one was about common objects. For the most part, that's one poem about cactus on the Acropolis. Even though I think yours had a theme, but maybe it wasn't like it was all about cats or all about dogs. It was all about a broader topic, like how ephemeral life is. Right?
My first one was kind of sort of autobiographical.
Okay. Could you hear the first one is autobiographical? So poetry collections don't have to have as narrow a focus. Chapbooks tend to have a narrow or sharper focus. Michael.
That's right. Your introduction referred to flash fiction. I think it's much better.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Flash fiction, you'll get slightly different word limits, certainly under 1,000 words, very often under 500 words. There's one publisher that has 53 words limit, 53. And the example that's given a lot, I remember it, is Ernest Hemingway. He accepted a challenge of writing a 6-word short story. And his 6-word short story was for sale, baby shoes, never used. You know. Any other questions? Let me just make some announcements about upcoming events. On the literary front, on Thursday at 3:30 in the Hall of Philosophy, Valeria Luciani will be reading or talking about her book, Lost Children Archive, a novel. On Friday, on this porch, will be a community reading. The teachers of the 2 workshops, poetry and prose, at the Writers' Center this week will choose 2 or 3 readers from their workshops to read. It's been a very stimulating and satisfying experience so far. And plus, they'll read the community poem. If you've seen, there's been a prompt this week, and people have been giving fine stanzas, even whole poems. And sometimes it's funny, sometimes someone else edits it into one poem. With our sister art, I highly recommend the play First Day Candle. Developed it to Aqua 7 years ago, went to Detroit and Broadway, and it's back. And if you saw it 7 years ago, you'll be, delighted on how it's taken a strong, first draft or early draft, and it's become, quite a powerful play. Next week, Authors Hour. That's, 12:15 here. Tuesday, we have Mark B. Gardner. Love that person, by the way. Mark B. Gardner, reading from her novel version, Snow. Is that right? He's right there. And Carol Jennings, who's been here several times, will be reading poetry from her most recent book of poetry, The Sustained Pedal. Hope to see you there. Thank you for coming today.